In this video, we're going to cover how to weight paint an armature to an object. Weight painting is the process for attaching models to bones so that they can all be moved and manipulated without having to do all this manually. Weight painting itself is the process of assigning a weight, or a number if you like, or a value, for each individual vertex within a model. These individual vertex weights, or numbers, are then assigned directly to a bone. As a bone rotates, scales or moves, it takes the weight number of each vertex and performs a mathematical calculation. If a vertex weight has a value of 1, for example, then as the bone moves 1 unit or 1 centimeter, the vertex itself moves 1 unit or 1 centimeter. Rotations and scalings are similar in that they rotate around the bone's head. But it's worth bearing in mind that the closer the vertices are to the head, the less they'll scale or rotate. Okay, so all we're going to be working on in this video then are these two bones that I've got set up with Suzanne. If you click on the bone, go into pose mode and rotate the bone left and right, you can see it actually working quite well there. And that's on both sides as such, like that. So we're going to be creating a very simple, straightforward rig. Okay, for this, I think we're going to be using a blank scene. So let's just take all these here and just delete them out because we don't need to see them. Go into front view and just add Mesh Suzanne, or monkey here. I'm just going to apply a subdivision surface modifier by doing Ctrl 2 and set it to shade smoothing. Okay, so the first thing I want to work on is the ear. Essentially, what I want to have happen is that I want to have the bone sort of crossing over the ear here, and then I want this to basically rotate the ear sort of this way potentially. And I want to do this with the bone and with a bit of weight painting. So to begin with, then what we need to do is add a new armature. You'll see behind Suzanne here with the bone poking out. So what you can do, if you go to the armature settings panel here, go to viewport display, enable in front. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to always see the bone in front of any objects within Blender. Comes in handy. Sometimes it's called X-ray as well, so that's worth bearing in mind. So with that said, we need to move this bone into position. So you need to do this in edit mode. So click on to edit mode using tab and then just move the bone to sort of here. More or less where the sort of earlobe kind of ish is. Then click on the tail end and then just stick it more or less there. And then go into top view and then just kind of line up the bones with the ear. So you're probably looking at something like that maybe. So to join up the bone to the object, you basically just need to parent it. You're using the same general basic parenting system that you use with practically anything else in Blender. Click on the bone first, go into pose mode, Ctrl tab, the bone will turn blue if it's in pose mode, so that's correct. After you've done that, click on Suzanne and then you need to shift click on the bone here, and that will basically mean that you can parent the Suzanne straight to the bone. Then for now, do Ctrl P to parent the same as you normally would, and you get a list here. So you get the option to set to parent to objects, keep transform, without inverse, armature deform, empty groups, envelope weights, and automatic weights. I think the easiest way to do this would be to just parent straight to armature deform to begin with. And what basically means now is if you was to click on the bone, nothing should happen. But what you now need to do is weight paint. So what you need to do, make sure you got the bone selected, shift click on the Suzanne and go into Control tab weight paint. So then what you can do is if you click on the bone and then sort of rotate it down here, and then if you start painting now, you should find that the vertices start jumping. As such, like that. You can control the size and how much weight that the cursor has by pressing the W key, right mouse button, depending on how you've got it set up. And you get the weight, the radius, and the strength here. Or you can also click on the tool sort of panel on the right hand side here as well. You get the settings there. So if you want to take weight away, again you just need to change the weight to 0 here and then highlight the vertices again as such, like that, and I'll put them all back to 0 as such. You do get problems like this with weight painting sometimes where you struggle to click on a vertex like it has been there, but a little bit of perseverance usually helps fix that. But I don't want to take any more weight away, so let's just put the weight back to 1 here, and then I want to increase the size of the circle as well. So again, press the W key and then increase the radius a little bit. You can also press F as well to increase or decrease the size of the cursor, and then just carry on painting these so that they all line up here. You do also have the option to enable like a wireframe as well, so you can easily select the vertices. If you press Shift Zulu here, you get a sort of wireframe here, and that tells you exactly where the Y's are, or where the vertices are. So the weight is basically being assigned to these individual vertices here. So it's just a case of going around and working through sort of the vertices as such like that, and make sure it looks relatively clean. So if you click on Suzanne herself and go Control Tab and go back to object mode here, click on the bone, go back to pose mode if necessary, and move the ear up and down, you should find it now works pretty much as intended. You can sort of see a bit of pinching going on here, so you might want to fix that by going back into weight paint mode. Go back to wireframe and just sort of lower the strength down a little bit maybe. So this is the thing with weight painting in general, is there's a lot of experimentation really, and it only comes with practice on a lot of these kind of rigs really, especially when you come into like character models and whatnot. So you'll get used to exactly when and how to weight paint. So I'm going to increase the weight paint there just to try and even this out a little bit. So as you can see, the rotation of the vertex there, so I might have to put that back to 0 actually. You can actually rotate the bone whilst in pose mode as well, if that's something you want to do. If you're starting to get little bugs like I just had there as well, it might be worth sort of just rotating it, because that sometimes helps fix the error as well. If you're so inclined, if you go to the modifiers panel, you'll see it says here armature. If you're starting to get problems like this, where like you're getting sort of sharp edges and whatnot, it might be worth moving the armature to above the subsurf modifier there as such like that. And that might help even out some of the problems. So already that looks a lot better, I think. I'm just going to come out of weight paint mode, so do Control Tab, and again just put it back into objects mode as such like that. So we've got one ear here, put that back in pose mode. What if I want to mirror this onto the opposite side? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do this. First of all, we need to name the bone. Now, the way I always work my personal armatures, just to keep things consistent and easy to remember, is I always have the left and right set up based on the character's perspective. So this is the middle line here, and on the left here, that's the left. That's technically on the right hand side of the viewport, if you like. And on the opposite side here, you have the right hand side. So left hand side's always here and the right hand side's always there. So with that said, when it comes to naming bones, you can see what the name of the bone is at the top left here. So you can see it's at the moment it just says bone. You can also find it in the bone settings panel here and just there at the top. So to name this then, you can either just rename it directly there, or even if you go into the outliner here, you can see it under all these sort of options here, and it can be a bit of a pain finding them sometimes. There it is there. But the easiest way I found to do it is just to use the F2 shortcut. So just press F2 and you get a pop-up box here. Now, because it's going to be mirrored onto the opposite side, it's important to add a left or right suffix at the end. So to name bones like this, I'd recommend just calling it what it is really. In this case, it's going to be an ear bone. Now, Blender lets you do this in a few different ways. This is not case sensitive, that's worth mentioning, but you get the option of space left. I want to say left, I just mean the character L, dot left, underscore left, or dash left. The opposite will be true if you're doing it on the opposite side, so you say like the dot R, space R, etc. So you get these options there. You can just use one of them. So I'm just going to stick to the first one. So I'll do space left. So I'll just delete the rest of them here and then just press enter to confirm it. And that replaces the name of the bone. You can see at the top left there as well. So to symmetrize this onto the opposite side, what you need to do is go back into edit mode and press the right mouse button or the W key, depending on how you've got it set up. And you're looking for this, symmetrize. Symmetrize, if you click on that, it will copy the bone to the opposite side of the object here, and it will also invert the left and right as well. If you go into pose mode, okay, it hasn't transferred the weight paints over, so I'm a bit surprised by that, but there is another way of doing it. So what you need to basically do is click on the Suzanne object herself in object mode, and you need to go to the vertex data panel here. Essentially, what's listed here is the weight paint assigned to a bone. So we need to mirror this. So if you click on this and click on copy vertex group here, and you'll get an ear left copy. So you've basically got two vertex groups with exactly the same settings. So if you just click on the bone here and go into weight paint mode, you'll see it's there. But what you basically need to do is inverse this. So if you click on this drop down here, and basically you're looking for this mirror vertex group as such, like that. But you'll find now that if you to click on this here, it works fine, but if you click on the other bone here, it doesn't work. So you need to find a way of basically assigning the bones to that bone. So what you basically need to do is click on this ear left here and just change it to ear right. And then what you should find then is if you was to click on the bone itself and then rotate it backwards and forwards here, that the weight paint should work correctly per bone as such, like that. Perfect. To skip this step in future, there's another option available at your disposal as well. If you go into edit mode on the armature, so I'm just going to go into object mode for the Suzanne, in edit mode for the armature, and load up the November properties panel. If you go to tools, you'll see an option here that says X-axis mirror. What that basically does is whatever changes you make to the left hand side will be duplicated onto the opposite side. There's a version of this setting for both pose mode and edit mode, so it's worth bearing that in mind. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as Suzanne weight paint. So if you want to download the model, have a look at your resources and it should be there. Okay, I think that'll do for weight painting. I know it's a very simple introduction, but hopefully you get a general idea of how it works and what you need to do to get it to operate or cooperate with you. There's quite a lot more involved with weight painting that you may be interested to look into, especially as you go further into weight paint and as you develop your rigs for especially organic models and whatnot. There's a couple of caveats with weight painting. The biggest one in my experience generally, well, other than it being a little bit awkward to use sometimes, and it's just a tad bit buggy, or it can be, is it actually slows down your computer. If you've got a slower or an older computer, you may find that weight painting is a very inefficient way to create rigs. In my experience, if you're creating sort of mechanical rigs for vehicles or whatever like that, weight painting is generally not the way to go about doing that. You should basically pair it direct to the bone. In the next lecture, I'm going to concentrate on just the custom shapes, so it should be a fairly quick and straightforward tutorial. So I shall see you in the next lecture.